The letter arrived on a Tuesday, rain-soaked and crumpled, as if the mail carrier had hesitated before shoving it through the slot. Ethan Caldwell, 28, stood frozen in his small Seattle apartment, the paper trembling in his hands as his mother's sharp handwriting sliced through years of silence. "You are no longer my son." Those words, penned in unforgiving ink, burned deeper than the day she'd turned him away at 17. Her voice cold as the Minnesota winter outside their old farmhouse. Ethan's life had been a quiet rebellion against that rejection. He'd fled to Seattle after high school, trading cornfields for city lights, chasing a dream of belonging. Now, a decade later, he was a graphic designer with a modest studio apartment, a tight-knit group of friends, and a partner, Marcus, who made every day feel like a small victory. But that letter, with its finality, reopened a wound he thought had scarred over. He sank onto the couch, the city's hum outside his window fading as memories flooded back. He was 16 when he told his mother, Diane, he was gay. Her face had hardened, her devout faith twisting love into judgment. "You're choosing sin," she'd said, her voice low, as if speaking it louder would taint the house. A year later, she'd packed his bags, left them on the porch, and locked the door. His father, a quiet man who followed her lead, said nothing. Ethan had hitchhiked to Minneapolis that night, sleeping in a bus station until he could scrape together enough for a ticket west. Now, at 28, Ethan had built something solid, a life where love wasn't conditional. Marcus, 32, was his anchor, a social worker with a quick laugh and a knack for listening. Marcus had grown up in Atlanta, raised by a single mother who'd embraced his bisexuality with fierce pride. Their first date, at a cozy Pike Place market cafe, had stretched into hours of shared stories, laughter, and a spark that hadn't dimmed in 3 years. Ethan didn't need his mother's approval anymore, but the letter still stung, a reminder of what he'd lost. He tucked the letter into a drawer, unwilling to let it ruin his day. Tonight was special. Marcus had planned a surprise at Volunteer Park, their favorite spot. Ethan pulled on a jacket, grabbed his sketchbook, a habit from his design work, and headed out into the drizzle. The park was alive with spring energy. Cherry blossoms swaying, kids chasing kites, and vendors selling tamales from colorful carts. Marcus waited by their usual bench, his green eyes catching the light as he waved Ethan over. "You're late," Marcus teased, pulling Ethan into a warm hug. "Got lost in a logo design again?" Ethan laughed, the weight of the letter easing. "Something like that." He didn't mention it yet. He wanted this moment untainted. Marcus handed him a coffee, and they sat, shoulders brushing, watching the park's rhythm unfold. A group of friends played frisbee nearby, their shouts mixing with the strumming of a busker's guitar. Ethan sketched absently, capturing the curve of Marcus's jawline, the way his hands moved when he talked about his latest case at the youth shelter. "Got something for you," Marcus said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Ethan's heart skipped. Inside was a simple silver ring, engraved with a tiny star, a nod to their late-night stargazing trips. "It's not a proposal," Marcus said quickly, his cheeks flushing. "Not yet, just a promise. That we're in this, you know." Ethan's throat tightened. He slipped the ring on, feeling its weight, its warmth. "I know," he whispered, leaning in for a kiss that felt like defiance against every rejection he'd ever faced. The park seemed to pause, the world narrowing to just them. But as they walked home, hand in hand, Ethan's thoughts drifted back to the letter. He hadn't told Marcus yet, unsure how to voice the shame of being disowned twice. Marcus noticed his quietness, squeezing his hand. "You okay, babe?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Just family stuff. He'd tell him soon, but not tonight. Tonight was for them, for the family they were building, brick by brick, in a city that had become home. The next morning, Ethan woke to the scent of pancakes and Marcus's off-key humming in the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the apartment's tall windows, casting a glow on the mismatched furniture they'd thrifted together. Ethan lay still, the ring on his finger catching the light, grounding him. But the letter, hidden in the drawer, gnawed at his peace. Over breakfast, Marcus sensed the shift. "You've been quiet since last night," he said, sliding a plate of pancakes across the table. "Spill it, Caldwell." Ethan sighed, retrieving the letter and handing it over. Marcus read in silence, his jaw tightening. "She doesn't get to do this to you," he said finally, his voice steady but fierce. "You're not that kid anymore. You've got us, me, Lena, Javier. We're your family." Lena and Javier were their closest friends, a queer couple who ran a bookstore in Capitol Hill. Lena, 30, was a fiery trans woman with a knack for poetry, while Javier, 29, was a soft-spoken non-binary artist whose murals dotted the city. They'd all met at a queer community event 2 years ago, bonding over bad karaoke and shared dreams. Ethan knew Marcus was right, but the letter still felt like a tether to a past he couldn't fully escape. That afternoon, they met Lena and Javier at their bookstore, Pages and Pride, a cozy space filled with rainbow flags and shelves of queer literature. Lena was behind the counter, her bright red hair pulled into a messy bun, while Javier sketched in a corner. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Lena said, eyeing Ethan. He showed them the letter. Lena's face darkened. "Your mom's got some nerve," she said, tossing her hair. "You don't need her. You've got a whole life here she'll never touch." Javier, quieter, added, "Family's what you make, not what you're born into." They invited Ethan and Marcus to a community potluck that evening, a monthly event where Seattle's queer community gathered to share food and stories. Ethan agreed, craving the distraction. The potluck was held in a community center near Lake Union, its walls covered in vibrant murals. Tables groaned under dishes from every corner of the world: Ethiopian injera, Korean kimchi, homemade apple pie. Ethan felt the room's warmth wrap around him, easing the ache in his chest. He and Marcus mingled, laughing with strangers who felt like kin. A young trans teen, Riley, shared how they'd found refuge at Marcus's shelter after their own family's rejection. Ethan saw his younger self in Riley's eyes, and it stirred something fierce in him, a need to protect, to build. As the night wound down, Ethan stepped outside for air, Marcus joining him. The city sparkled across the lake, a constellation of lights. "I want to do more," Ethan said suddenly. "For kids like Riley. Like me, back then." Marcus nodded, his hand finding Ethan's. "We could, together, maybe start a mentorship program at the shelter. You've got the art skills, I've got the social work know-how." The idea took root, bold and alive. Ethan felt a shift, as if the letter's weight was finally lifting. He wasn't just surviving his mother's rejection, he was building something she'd never understand. Weeks passed, and Ethan threw himself into the mentorship idea. He and Marcus spent evenings sketching out plans, blending Ethan's design expertise with Marcus's knowledge of youth outreach. They named it Canvas of Care, a program to teach queer youth art as a way to process trauma and build community. Lena and Javier jumped in, offering their bookstore as a meeting space. But the letter still lingered in Ethan's mind, surfacing in quiet moments. He hadn't responded to his mother, unsure if he ever would. Part of him wanted to write back, to prove he'd thrive despite her. Another part wanted to let her fade into irrelevance. One rainy afternoon, while setting up for the first Canvas of Care workshop, Ethan got a call from an unknown number. His stomach dropped as he answered. It was his father, Paul, his voice hesitant. "Your mom, she's sick, Ethan. Cancer. She doesn't know I'm calling." Ethan's breath caught. He hadn't spoken to his father in years, not since that silent goodbye on the porch. "Why tell me now?" he asked, his voice sharp. "She won't say it, but she's scared. I thought maybe you'd want to know." Ethan hung up, his hands shaking. Marcus, setting up easels nearby, noticed. "Who was that?" "My dad," Ethan said, the words heavy. He explained, and Marcus listened, his presence steady. "I don't know what to do," Ethan admitted. "Part of me wants to see her, to show her I'm happy. Part of me wants to let her go." Marcus squeezed his shoulder. "You don't have to decide now. Focus on the kids today. This?" He gestured to the room, where Riley and other teens were arriving, paintbrushes in hand. "This is what matters." The workshop was a success. Riley painted a vibrant mural of a phoenix, its wings blazing with color. Ethan watched, pride swelling. These kids were his purpose now, not the approval of a woman who'd cast him out. Still, his father's call lingered, a question he couldn't yet answer. That night, Ethan dreamed of the Minnesota farmhouse. His mother's face blurred but her voice sharp. "You are no longer my son." He woke with a start, Marcus's arm around him. In the dark, he whispered, "I need to go back. Not for her. For me." Marcus nodded, half asleep but resolute. "We'll go together." Ethan and Marcus booked flights to Minneapolis, the decision both terrifying and freeing. Ethan hadn't been back in a decade, and the thought of facing his mother, or her absence, felt like stepping into a storm. Marcus insisted on coming, his steady presence a reminder that Ethan wasn't alone. They arrived in late spring, the Minnesota air crisp and heavy with lilac. The farmhouse looked smaller than Ethan remembered, its paint peeling, the porch sagging. His father greeted them at the door, his face lined with years and worry. "She's in the living room," Paul said, glancing at Marcus with cautious curiosity. Diane lay on a recliner, thinner than Ethan remembered, her eyes sharp despite her frailty. She looked at him, then at Marcus, her lips tightening. "You brought him," she said, her voice weak but laced with disapproval. "This is Marcus," Ethan said, his tone firm. "My partner." The room crackled with tension. Paul hovered, unsure, as Diane's gaze hardened. "I didn't ask you to come," she said. "You didn't," Ethan replied. "Dad did. I came to say what I need to say." He sat across from her, Marcus at his side. The words poured out. Years of pain, resilience, love. He told her about Seattle, his art, the family he'd built with Marcus, Lena, Javier, and the kids at Canvas of Care. "You threw me out," he said, his voice steady. "But I didn't break. I made a life you'll never be part of, and I'm proud of it." Diane's face didn't soften, but her eyes flickered, maybe with regret, maybe with defiance. She said nothing, and Ethan realized he didn't need her to. He'd come for closure, not reconciliation. They left the next day, the farmhouse fading in the rearview mirror. On the plane, Marcus held his hand. "You okay?" he asked. Ethan nodded, the ring on his finger glinting. "Yeah, I'm free." Back in Seattle, Canvas of Care grew. The program expanded, drawing more kids like Riley, each with their own stories of rejection and hope. Ethan and Marcus rented a larger space, a loft in Capitol Hill, where they hosted workshops and community nights. Lena and Javier became co-organizers, their bookstore a hub for donations and support. One evening, at a packed community night, Riley unveiled a new mural, a vibrant cityscape with figures holding hands, their faces undefined but their unity clear. "This is us," Riley said, their voice steady. "All of us." Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. He looked at Marcus, who was laughing with a group of teens, then at Lena and Javier, who were passing out homemade tamales. This was his family, not bound by blood, but by choice, by love. Months later, Ethan got a letter from his father. Diane had passed, leaving no final words for him. The news stung, but it didn't break him. He tucked the letter away, next to the first one, and turned back to his life. On a warm summer evening, Ethan and Marcus stood in Volunteer Park, surrounded by their chosen family. Marcus dropped to one knee, a new ring in his hand, this time a proposal. "Build a life with me?" he asked, his voice soft but sure. Ethan laughed through tears, pulling him up for a kiss. "I already have." As cheers erupted around them, Ethan felt the weight of his past dissolve. He'd been disowned, but he'd built something greater. A family that loved him for who he was, a legacy of resilience and hope. His mother would never see it, but that was her loss, not his.